I had a lot of trouble sleeping last night because every time I was about to fall asleep, I would have a flashback to something from my past. Literally every time I was about to fall asleep. And they came more vividly than normal, and it was about stuff that was affecting me more than normal because it seems to vary how much these bad events affect me. They seem to always affect me negatively when I remember them, but it's kind of a crapshoot. It's unpredictable as to whether or not it's going to affect me that badly. But last night it affected me that badly. And every time I would remember this stuff right as I was about to fall asleep and leading up to me going to sleep as well, I would just start screaming. I would get up from where I was at, put the pillow over my face so I wouldn't be too loud, but oftentimes I wasn't fast enough. I'd just start right there. I'd just start screaming. And I tried, the moment that I noticed I was doing it, I tried to make it less loud for my neighbors, but to some extent it was just uncontrollable. And it wasn't fun. And that's why I woke up today at like 12 in the afternoon, because last night I was trying to get to sleep and I couldn't because I kept waking up screaming. Not really waking up, but pseudo waking up, I guess I'll call it. And it makes me think about my broader relationship to these memories and what I need to do to fix this, because I remember bad things that happen to me every day, all throughout the day, and some days I have very few episodes like this, or even none at all, very rarely, but some days I have none at all. And then other days it's a lot worse, and that can manifest in me being a lot more paranoid about other people and their intentions. That can manifest in me isolating a lot more, in me having reoccurring panic attacks, sometimes multiple in one day, disturbances in sleep, as you can probably tell. And it makes me think about how exactly I can remedy this, because there has to be a way, right? Now, this is something I've talked to a lot of doctors about, and it appears to me like the first thing that I need to do in regards to this is ask myself not what the events were or the specifics of the events, but more so how those events made me feel. If I can understand how those events made me feel, then I can also understand how they're making me feel again when something triggers me that causes me to remember the things that happened. And then I can actually work to decouple myself from a lot of the latent feelings that I associate with what happened. I think that's going to be the start. Now, as to how I actually get there, I think is a more complex process, because I can just say something like that. Oh yeah, I need to find out how that stuff made me feel. Well, the actual process of figuring that out, of working through all that, takes a lot longer, because you have to be engaging with subject matter and material that I'm prone to avoiding. And also, there's a lot of different directions that I could potentially go in that line of inquiry that may be incorrect or not necessarily accurate for how we should describe what's going on here. It's something that takes a lot of time to articulate, essentially. But I think that's where I need to start. And once I have that understanding, I think that I can then go on to address some of the broader problems of avoidance of these things. You know, when you avoid something, you make it more powerful, because every time you avoid that thing, you're essentially training your brain to think that avoiding that thing kept you safe. And that's going to only increase the extent to which you're anxious about a particular thing. And so, if I have a holistic understanding of how those events made me feel, what they make me feel, and if I continue to address the component of avoidance here, then I think I have a real shot at recovering from my PTSD. I did a video recently where I talked about how I have noise on all the time, and how I wanted to turn the noise off in order to have more creative thoughts or think more creatively. A part of that story that I didn't necessarily go into in that video is that the other reason why I want to have that noise off for more of the day is because I experience these terrible flashbacks. And if I could just embrace the memories that make me fearful and turn me inside out, if I could just engage with them more so, then I think they might have less power over me. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go away. That's not how it works. But I think they would have less power over me if I just accepted them as is and thought about it. And this isn't something that I haven't done before. I've done this before to varying degrees of success. But there were times when it certainly helped. And so it should be a tool in my toolbox. That's something that I need to be willing to do, and having the noise off, all the podcasts, etc. off, is going to help me do that. I think another thing that I ought to do before I start engaging with some of these thoughts more head on is ground myself. You know, there's several things that you can do to ground yourself that I've been doing since I was like 15, 16, that I was taught when I first started going to therapy. You know, one of the first things I was taught was to put a rubber band on my hand and flick it really hard until it hurts in that area. Now, I was taught that as a way of preventing myself from self-harming back then, because that was a thing that I used to do. But it also helps to kind of get you back into reality, because sometimes the flashbacks I have are associated with something else that happens to me that's pretty scary. I'll enter this state of mind where I'll either feel like I don't exist or reality doesn't exist. I'll be sitting there and I'll just be kind of blank, because I'll literally feel like nothing around me is real. And sometimes I need another person to snap me out of that if it gets particularly bad. But taking the rubber band and snapping it, or dousing your face with cold water, these things legitimately help when I'm beginning to enter that state of mind. And they also help, I think, with kind of resetting my mind when I am in need of engaging with some of these more negative things that I'm prone to avoiding. If I can attempt to think about them in a more rational way, empathizing with myself in those scenarios, and even with the people who had harmed me, and trying to come to an understanding of those scenarios in a much more holistic way, for example, like understanding the reasons for why those people might have acted that way, or for why society may have been set up in such a way, considering them more deeply and trying to forgive everyone involved. I mean, that's big stuff right there. But that's big stuff that can only really come from reflection and actively attempting to change the way that we think about this stuff. Changing the thoughts is really crucial. And there's several ways that you get there, but I think for me right now, considering how that stuff made me feel, those events, rather than particularly fixating on the events themselves, because that's what I'm already doing and that's not helping, obviously, as well as engaging in those grounding techniques and considering those things in a constructive way, or from a constructive standpoint, those events, I think I have a good chance at reducing some of this extreme stress that I face in the advent of all that happened. So yeah, there's another one.